The last signal. The wind screamed across the dead world, carrying the dust of 1,000 lost cities. Commander Lyra stumbled through the broken plains. Her armor cracked, her visor stained with ash. The planet had once been alive, filled with oceans and green valleys, but now it was nothing but red soil and toxic air. Her people had left, the fleet had escaped, but she had been left behind. Abandoned, forgotten, erased from every record. Her communicator blinked weakly on her wrist, the battery flashing its final warning. Every step she took sent pain through her chest, her oxygen levels falling faster than she could breathe. She tried to speak, but her voice came out dry. "This is Commander Lyra. If anyone hears this, please. I'm still alive." The signal cut through the storm, faint, cracked, a whisper across the stars. No one would answer, she thought. No one ever did. Lyra fell to her knees beside a half-buried beacon, its metal frame twisted by heat. The world trembled beneath her, the sky glowing with lightning that wasn't natural. It was the planet's core collapsing, poisoned by the weapons her own empire had used. She looked at the black clouds and wondered if this was justice. Maybe she deserved to die here, maybe all of them did. Still, something deep inside her refused to stop. A small voice whispered that someone, somewhere, might still care. She rerouted the beacon's last bit of power into the long-range transmitter. Her hands shook as she typed the coordinates. Then she pressed send and watched the signal vanish into the storm. Thousands of light years away, on a quiet listening post orbiting Neptune, a human operator named Evan leaned back in his chair. Bored from hours of silence, suddenly his console beeped. "Unknown transmission detected," the AI announced. Evan frowned and leaned closer. The signal was weak, nearly lost in cosmic noise, but he could hear fragments of a voice. "Please, still alive." He felt his skin crawl. It didn't match any known species. He saved the file and sent it straight to command. Within hours, the message reached the Odyssey, a human deep space exploration ship. Captain Ross listened in silence. His crew gathered around. The voice was desperate. Raw barely more than a breath, Lieutenant Hanna turned to him. "Sir, it's probably a trap. That region's marked restricted by the Galactic Council." Ross nodded slowly, staring at the blinking coordinates on the holographic map. "Maybe," he said, "but what if it isn't? What if someone's out there, waiting for help that never came?" Back on the dying world, Lyra crawled into a ruined bunker, her lungs burning. She looked at her reflection in the cracked glass of her helmet. Her once silver skin was dull and gray, her eyes dim from exhaustion. She remembered her crew's faces as they left her, how they avoided her gaze, how their commander said, "No space for failures," before the ship lifted off. She had trusted them. Now all she had was silence. Lightning flashed again, illuminating a torn flag half buried in the dirt. Her people's symbol, once a proud mark of empire, now meaningless. She reached for it, but her hand trembled too much to hold it. The beacon behind her began to fade, its glow flickering weaker each second. She whispered to the void, "If anyone hears me, I don't want to die alone, in orbit around Jupiter." Captain Ross prepared his report for Earth Command. Every logical argument said ignore it. But humanity had never been logical when someone needed help. He turned to his pilot. "Set course for Sector Epsilon 9. The crew stared at him in disbelief. "That's a no-entry zone, Captain," Ross smiled faintly. "Then we'll knock before entering." Engines roared as the Odyssey jumped into hyperspace. Stars stretched into lines of light for a moment. The universe seemed to hold its breath. On the other side of the galaxy, Lyra lay still, her beacon now completely dark. She felt the chill of death creeping into her bones. Her heart slowed, her vision blurred, but somewhere deep in the darkness, a light flickered, not from her world but from far beyond. It was faint, a human ship dropping out of warp. The sensors of the Odyssey detected faint biosigns on the planet below. Ross stared at the readings. "Still alive," he whispered. The words echoed through the command deck. For the first time in years, a lost world would see a new kind of visitor. Not conquerors, not executioners, but rescuers down below. As the last storm tore through the valley, Lyra opened her eyes one final time. Through the gray clouds, she thought she saw light cutting through the sky. Not lightning engines. She smiled weakly and whispered, "Someone heard me." Then she closed her eyes, letting the wind carry her words away above her. Humanity descended through the burning sky, unaware that this rescue would change the galaxy forever. The forbidden rescue. The Odyssey broke through hyperspace like a silver arrow slicing the dark. Its engines hummed low, its hull marked with the blue insignia of the Terran Alliance. Inside, the crew moved in silence, feeling the weight of what they were about to do. They were crossing into forbidden space, a region the Galactic Council had sealed for over a century, a place known only in whispers as the Graveyard World. Captain Ross stood at the viewport, watching distant stars fade behind the black fog ahead. He had seen war, he had seen rescue missions, but this felt different. This was not about orders or strategy. It was about something older, a voice calling for help in the dark. "Sir," said Lieutenant Hana, her hands shaking slightly. "We're entering restricted coordinates." Ross nodded. His jaw set. "Engage stealth field full power." The bridge lights dimmed to red. Outside, the ship became a ghost, invisible to scanners, silent to probes. Every sensor warned of radiation storms and magnetic spikes. "Readings are unstable," said the engineer. "Planet's magnetic field is collapsing." "Good," Ross muttered. "That means no one else will see us." Hours passed in tense silence. They finally broke through the black clouds and saw the planet. The crew gasped. It wasn't a world. It was a wound. Vast scars of fire burned across its surface. Oceans had turned to steam. Mountains had melted like wax. The sky flickered with crimson lightning that danced across the horizon. The AI spoke softly. "Life sign detected, faint but stable. Surface coordinates confirmed." Ross clenched his fists. "She's still alive," Hana whispered. "How?" "That world's atmosphere is toxic," Ross turned to her. "Then we'd better not waste time asking." They prepared the drop shuttle, a small craft designed for planetary rescue. Ross personally took command, no delegation, no hesitation. The crew watched as the hangar doors opened, the storm roaring below like a monster waiting to swallow them. As the shuttle fell through the red clouds, turbulence shook every bolt loose. Lightning cracked across the hull, sparks filled the cabin. "Stabilizers failing," shouted the pilot. "Hold it steady," Ross ordered, his voice calm but fierce. Outside, the world of ashes came into view. They landed hard. Metal screamed, dust filled the air. The landscape was unrecognizable. Broken towers and melted ships lay buried in dunes of gray. Hana stepped out first, her boots sinking into soft soil that hissed with heat. Her visor displayed radiation warnings. "Captain, this place is dead," she said quietly. Ross scanned the horizon, his voice firm. "Not dead enough to leave someone behind." The signal led them to a shattered bunker near a canyon's edge. Inside, the air was thick with smoke. The team moved cautiously, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Then they saw her, Commander Lyra, motionless, half buried under debris, her armor cracked, her breathing shallow. Her alien features glowed faintly under the flickering lights. Hana knelt beside her, scanning her vitals. "She's alive." "Barely." Ross removed his helmet, kneeling beside the alien. For a moment, he just looked at her, the being they had risked everything to save. "She's not human," said one of the soldiers quietly. Ross answered without looking up. "She's alive. That's all that matters." He lifted her carefully, her fragile frame light in his arms. Her eyes opened for a brief second. Seeing his face through the visor glow, her voice came as a whisper broken by exhaustion. "You came..." Ross nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said softly. "We heard you." As they carried her to the shuttle, the ground trembled. From the sky came distant roars, not thunder. "Not nature ships, multiple contacts incoming," the AI warned. "Unknown vessels descending fast," Ross cursed under his breath. "They found us," Hana's voice shook. "Sir, that's the Council's enforcement fleet. If they catch us here, they'll destroy the ship." Ross looked down at Lyra, unconscious again in his arms. "Then we better be faster," he said. The shuttle lifted off, engines screaming against the violent storm. Lightning chased them through the sky, the clouds flashing red and blue. "Contacts closing distance," reported Hana. "They're locking weapons." Ross activated the comm link to the Odyssey. "Prepare immediate extraction and hot pickup, and tell the crew to punch the jump engines the moment we're aboard." "Copy that." "Captain," came the reply. "We're ready." The storm parted just long enough for the Odyssey to appear, massive and gleaming. The shuttle docked with a heavy thud. As the hangar sealed shut, the ship's AI reported. "Enemy cruisers in range," Ross shouted. "Jump now." In a burst of light, the Odyssey vanished into hyperspace. Leaving the dying world behind, silence filled the cabin. Broken only by the soft beeping of Lyra's heart monitor, Hana looked at Ross. "Sir, we just broke 6 interstellar laws." Ross smiled faintly, exhaustion in his eyes. "Yeah," he said, "but we kept one human one." Hana tilted her head. "Which one's that?" Ross looked at Lyra. "Don't abandon someone who's still fighting." Outside the ship, the void of space stretched infinite and cold, but inside, for the first time in years, something warm had returned. Hope, the forbidden rescue, was complete. And none of them knew it was only the beginning of a war that would shake the stars themselves. The survivor, the hum of the engines, was the first sound Lyra heard. It was soft, steady, almost peaceful, not the storm, not the screams, not the thunder of falling skies, just the quiet rhythm of life. She opened her eyes slowly, her vision blurry. Bright white lights filled her sight, and strange shapes moved around her, voices, calm, human voices, and spoke words she couldn't understand. Her body felt heavy. Her chest burned when she tried to breathe, and then she saw it. A human face. Captain Ross leaned over her, his expression calm but curious. He had removed his helmet, his brown eyes meeting hers with quiet strength. "You're safe now," he said slowly. Hoping she would understand, she blinked, her dry lips moving weakly. "Huh, man," she whispered. Ross nodded once. "Yeah, that's right." She tried to sit up, but pain rushed through her body like fire. Wires and medical tubes pulled at her arms. A medic gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Easy, don't move. You've been through a lot." Her breathing quickened, confusion in her eyes. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice fragile. "On a ship," Ross answered. "Our ship." "You saved me?" "Yes." "But why?" she whispered, her tone breaking. "My people left me." Ross stood silent for a moment. He had no grand answer, no speech to give. Finally, he said, "Because you were still alive, and that was reason enough." Lyra looked away, tears forming but never falling. Her own kind had erased her, called her a traitor. And now these strangers, these humans, had risked their lives to save her. The medic adjusted her readings. "She's stable, Captain, but she needs rest and hydration." Ross nodded and turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. "What will happen to me now?" He turned back. "You heal first," he said gently. "Then we'll figure out the rest." She wanted to believe him, but deep down, she knew her survival might bring danger to everyone on this ship. Hours passed outside her window. Stars drifted by like slow-moving lanterns. She had never seen them so close before. Human ships didn't move like her people's vessels. They didn't rely on elegant curves or advanced AI. They moved with purpose, with strength, with will. Even broken, they kept going. Maybe that was what made them dangerous and beautiful. Later, Ross returned with 2 crew members and a small translation device. He placed it gently near her pillow. "This should help us talk better," he said. Smiling faintly, the machine hummed, adjusting to her language. "Do you remember what happened before we found you?" he asked. She looked down, her voice shaking. "My fleet used a planetary weapon, something forbidden. I tried to stop them. They called me a traitor, left me to die." Ross frowned. "You tried to stop them?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, I sent the beacon not for my people, but for anyone who would listen." "And we did?" Ross said quietly. "Guess you called the right kind of trouble." For the first time, Lyra smiled weakly. It wasn't a smile of joy, it was disbelief. "You're kind. You didn't even know me. But you came." Ross crossed his arms, looking out the window. "We're not great at ignoring things that are wrong," he said. "Even when it's none of our business." Alarms suddenly broke the quiet moment. The ship's AI spoke through the speakers. "Multiple vessels detected. Tracking signatures match Galactic enforcement." Hana's voice followed, tense and urgent. "They found us, Captain." Ross turned toward the door. "Get her to the medbay lockdown chamber now." Lyra's eyes widened in panic. "They'll kill you for saving me." Ross looked back, his voice calm. "They can try." Moments later, the ship shook under a sudden blast. The lights flickered red, the alarm echoing down every corridor. "Shields at 70%, shouted the engineer. Ross took command at the bridge. "Evasive pattern, Delta 7. Keep the jump drive charging." Hana's fingers flew across the controls. "Sir, they're broadcasting a demand." Surrender the alien prisoner immediately. Ross glanced at Lyra's image on the med bay monitor. His jaw tightened. Tell them she's under human protection. Hana turned, shocked. Sir? That's a declaration of defiance. The Council will retaliate. Ross's eyes hardened. They already did when they left her to die. The Odyssey spun through space, dodging energy fire as blue light streaked past its hull. Inside the med bay, Lyra watched the chaos through the glass. For the first time since her exile, she felt something new. Guilt mixed with awe. These humans, these strangers, were risking everything, not for power, but for her. Her chest tightened as she whispered, "Why would they do this?" The medic beside her smiled faintly. Because that's what we do. The Odyssey fired its countermeasure flares, disappearing into a burst of light. The pursuing ships were blinded for seconds. And in those seconds, Ross made his move. Activate quantum veil, full stealth, maximum output. The stars blinked, and the ship vanished from every radar. The enemy fleet scanned desperately, finding nothing but empty space. In the sudden silence that followed, Ross exhaled. Status, Hana replied. Stealth holding, but the engine core is overheating. We can't stay hidden for long. Ross nodded. Then let's buy enough time to figure out why she was left behind. Down in the med bay, Lyra watched the human crew move like one heartbeat, fearless, united, and alive. She realized something powerful. They didn't need to be the strongest species in the galaxy. They only needed to be the ones who cared. And in that moment, for the first time since her own world died, Commander Lyra began to believe that maybe humanity was something far greater than anyone had ever imagined. The chase begins. The silence after the battle didn't last long. The Odyssey drifted through the shadow of a dying star, its hull glowing faintly under the red light. Inside the command deck, alarms pulsed in warning. Stealth field at 50%, Hana said, her voice tense. They're still scanning for us. Captain Ross stood still, his eyes locked on the star map. They won't stop, he said quietly. We embarrassed the Council in front of their own fleet. Below deck, Commander Lyra watched through a small window. The stars looked close enough to touch, each one a reminder of freedom and danger. She had become the galaxy's most hunted survivor. Her own empire wanted her erased. The Council wanted her silenced, and now she was hiding inside a human ship that refused to abandon her. The door opened with a hiss and Ross stepped inside. He looked tired, eyes shadowed by sleepless hours, but his voice was calm. How's the patient? He asked. Lyra smiled weakly. Alive. Thanks to your chaos, Ross chuckled softly. Chaos is our specialty. He leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. You said your people used a weapon on that planet, he began. She nodded slowly, her gaze falling. They called it the Devourer. It breaks the planet's core from inside, turns life into energy. Ross frowned. Why would anyone do that? To prove power, she whispered. To make others kneel. Ross's jaw tightened. Well, they'll have to find new knees. Because we're not kneeling. Before she could respond, the ship's AI interrupted. Multiple jump signatures detected. Hostile vessels entering the system. Ross turned instantly. Hana, report. The comm crackled with static. They found us, sir. 12 ships coming in fast, Ross shouted. Raise shields, prepare evasive course. All hands to combat stations. The ship came alive with motion. Crew members ran through corridors, red lights flashing over their helmets. Engines roared to full thrust. Outside, the blackness of space lit up as enemy ships dropped from hyperspace, each one bristling with energy cannons and hunter drones. Hana's fingers flew across her console. They're locking weapons, 3 destroyers, 9 interceptors, Ross smirked. Perfect, just enough to make this interesting. The Odyssey spun hard to starboard, cutting through asteroid debris like a shark through waves. Bolts of plasma fire streaked past the hull, exploding into blue light. The crew braced as shockwaves rattled the decks. Lyra held onto the railing in the med bay, watching the chaos on the monitor. These ships, they're faster than you, she warned. Ross's voice came through the intercom. Maybe, but they don't think like us. The Odyssey dove straight into the dense storm of asteroids. Alien ships followed, confident in their superior targeting systems. But humans didn't play by their rules, Ross shouted. Release drone decoys on pattern Theta 4. Tiny pods launched from the ship, scattering false heat signatures across space. The enemy scanners flared with confusion. Several ships fired blindly. hitting each other instead of the target. Hannah laughed under her breath. They still don't understand chaos, Ross grinned. They will. Inside the storm, debris rained like meteors. One fragment struck the hull. Alarm screamed again. Minor breach in Deck 3, the engineer shouted. Seal it off and keep moving, Ross ordered. He turned to navigation. Course for the Veil Nebula. Full burn. Hannah looked up in shock. Sir? The Veil is unstable. Magnetic storms. Lightning fields. Ross cut her off. Exactly. They won't follow. The Odyssey accelerated, its engines glowing brighter than the dying star behind them. As they entered the swirling blue mist of the Veil, the stars vanished. Thunder cracked through space like gods arguing. Energy bolts flashed around them, wrapping the ship in blinding light. Lyra gasped as she saw plasma rivers flowing between the clouds. This place, she whispered. No ship survives here. Ross smiled. Then they'll never expect us to. The pursuing fleet stopped at the edge of the nebula. Their commanders debated in panic. Entering the Veil was suicide. Only humans would be reckless enough to try. And that was exactly why they would never catch them. Inside the storm, the Odyssey twisted and rolled, following the lightning currents like a surfer riding waves. Sparks danced across the hull. The ship's lights flickered. Every second was a fight against gravity and static. Engines overheating, warned the engineer. Ross gritted his teeth. Keep them alive for 5 more minutes. That's all I need. In the medbay, Lyra watched through trembling hands. Humans weren't the strongest species. They weren't the fastest or the smartest. But they had something no other race understood. They refused to stop. Even when logic said die, they said try, and somehow, that kept them alive. Finally, the Odyssey burst through the other side of the nebula. Stars returned calm and clear behind them. The fleet was gone. The entire crew erupted in cheers. Hannah laughed, wiping sweat from her forehead. Sir, that was insane, Ross smiled, exhausted. Insane is what works. Down below, Lyra closed her eyes and whispered to herself. They fight storms like they're nothing. They fight death like it's a game. Then she looked out the window. For the first time in my life, I think I understand why they scare the galaxy. The ship drifted into quiet space again. Engines cooling, hull glowing faintly from the storm. But even as calm returned, Ross knew the chase wasn't over. He looked at the star map, eyes narrowing. They'll come again, he said, but next time, we'll be ready. And somewhere in the shadows of the galaxy, a new signal blinked. A message from the Council itself. Humanity has interfered for the last time. Secrets of the dying world, the Odyssey drifted in the quiet after the storm. Engines cooling. Lights dimmed to blue. Crew moving softly through the halls like ghosts after a battle. Outside, the Veil Nebula glowed in every color of fire and ice. A curtain hiding them from the galaxy. But peace on a human ship never lasted long. Captain Ross stood before the central map. A swirl of red points showing Council patrol routes. We bought time, not safety, he said, voice low. Hannah crossed her arms, worry in her eyes. They'll scan every sector, sir. We can't stay hidden forever. Ross looked at the single green dot pulsing on the screen. The rescued alien survivor. Then let's make our time count, he said in the medbay. Commander Lyra sat upright for the first time. Her skin shimmered faintly under the sterile lights. She held a data pad the humans had given her, full of translated files from the planet where she had been left to die. Her hands trembled as she scrolled. The humans had recovered fragments of data from her broken armor. She recognized the symbols, ancient military codes of her empire. Hidden messages burned into the files like ghosts of betrayal. Ross entered quietly, his boots echoing on the metal floor. You're not resting, he said. Half a smile in his tone. I can't, she whispered. There's something buried in these files, something they didn't want anyone to see. She tapped the screen, bringing up a set of coordinates. They called it the Devourer, she continued. But that weapon wasn't made by us, Ross frowned. Then who built it? She looked up slowly. Your kind did, long ago. The room fell silent. Ross shook his head. That's impossible. Humans never had technology like that. Lyra's eyes glowed faintly. Not your generation, not even your species as it is now. But long before your recorded history, before the Council erased the truth, she showed him an image. A broken emblem carved into the planet's crust. It was worn and scorched, but the letters were clear enough to read. Earth Colony N7. Ross stepped back, shock tightening his chest. That planet was one of ours, he whispered. Lyra nodded. My people found it centuries ago. They found ruins, machines, records. They used the core technology to build their empire. Her voice trembled. When I learned the truth, I tried to stop them. They called me a traitor and left me there with the evidence. Ross paced across the room, mind racing. If the Council knows humans once built those weapons, they'll use it against us. They already have, Lyra said. Your species was labeled primitive to keep you quiet. But they fear what you might become again. Ross clenched his fists. They were right to fear us then, he said, his voice hard. But not because of our weapons, because we don't give up. The ship's lights flickered suddenly. Alarms flashing red. Unidentified energy surge in the data core, reported the AI. Ross and Lyra looked at each other. They found the signal, she said. They're tracking the data. Ross hit the comm. Hana, purge non-essential systems. Lock the archives. Why too late, Captain, Hana replied. The transmission already left the ship, Ross cursed under his breath. They'll know we found the truth. Outside, in the deep of the nebula, something moved, a shadow massive and silent, a ship larger than anything humanity had ever built. It glided through the mist, lights glowing like eyes. Lyra stared at the sensor display, her voice shaking. That's not the Council. That's my Empire's flagship, the Sovereign Dawn. They're here for the data. Ross turned to his crew. All hands, battle readiness, silent mode engaged, no signals. No lights. The Odyssey powered down to darkness, floating like a dead rock through the viewing port. The alien flagship drifted past, scanning the area with golden beams. One pass, two passes, then silence. The crew held their breath, every heartbeat loud in their chests. The ship finally turned away, fading into the clouds. When the danger passed, Ross exhaled. They'll be back, he said quietly. Lyra nodded. They won't stop until they erase every trace of what we found. Ross looked at the glowing coordinates still on the screen. Then we make sure everyone in the galaxy sees it before they do. For the first time since she was rescued, Lyra smiled without pain. You humans, she said softly. You never learn fear properly, do you? Ross smiled back. Maybe that's our best flaw. Outside, the Veil Nebula shimmered brighter, lightning crawling through its clouds like veins of living fire. Within that light, the Odyssey turned toward the unknown coordinates. Back to the planet humanity once called its own. The crew didn't know what they would find there. Ruins, secrets, or maybe the truth of why humanity was erased from history. But one thing was certain. The galaxy's oldest secret was awake again. And this time, humanity was coming to claim it. Humanity's hand. The Odyssey slipped from the nebula like a shadow reborn. Its hull carried burns from plasma storms and scars from battles it should never have survived. But humans had a habit of surviving the impossible, and now, they were heading toward the place that had started everything. The ancient world hung in the dark like a forgotten jewel, half covered in dust and frozen storms. Sensors picked up ruins beneath the surface. Cities buried for millennia. Ross stared at the hologram, the name glowing faintly in ancient Terran letters. Earth Colony N7, he whispered. Our lost world. Lyra stood beside him, wrapped in a borrowed human jacket. Her eyes reflected both guilt and awe. My people built their empire on the bones of yours, she said quietly. They feared the humans who came before you. Ross turned to her. Then let's remind them why. The Odyssey descended through the planet's thin atmosphere. Lightning streaked across the sky, the storms roaring like the ghosts of forgotten wars below. The ruins stretched for miles. Towers of black steel, shattered domes, and in the center, a glowing crater where something massive slept beneath the ice. Captain, said Hana, I'm picking up power readings. Ancient. Still active. Ross leaned closer to the screen. Then that's where we're going. They landed near the crater's edge, the crew stepping out into silence. The air was thin and cold, the ground humming faintly under their boots. It was as if the planet itself was waiting for them. Lyra's hand brushed against a wall of dark metal. Symbols glowed under her touch, words older than her own species. She whispered the translation slowly. To those who remember, humanity's hand will rise again. Ross and Hana exchanged looks. This isn't a grave, Hana said softly. It's a message. They moved deeper into the ruins, lights cutting through the mist. At the center stood a vast chamber, a dome lined with dormant machines, each shaped like a human hand reaching upward. In the middle, a control pillar pulsed faintly with blue light. Lyra stepped forward first. "The energy here, it's alive," she said. Ross approached the console. As his fingers brushed the surface, the entire chamber lit up. A deep vibration echoed through the ground, and then a voice, not human, not machine, but something between, spoke. "Welcome back. Children of Earth." The crew froze. Ross's eyes widened. The voice continued, calm and ancient. "This facility contains the last defense of the first humanity. If you have returned, the stars must again be in danger." Lyra stared in disbelief. "The first humanity? It's real." Ross looked at her. "Seems they left us a parting gift." Screens appeared in midair, showing galaxies, fleets, and destruction. The Devourer weapon, created by ancient humans to stop invaders, but it had been stolen, misused, and twisted into something monstrous now. The weapon's echo still slept under the crust of this world. Ross stepped back. "If we can wake it, maybe we can stop the Empire." Lyra hesitated. "Or destroy half the galaxy in the process." Outside, the sky burned suddenly. Enemy ships descending through the clouds. The Sovereign Dawn had arrived. Its shadow fell across the crater like a god of vengeance. Hana's voice crackled through the comm. "Captain, they found us. We're surrounded." Ross looked at the console. The ancient light pulsing faster, he made his choice. "We wake it." Lyra's eyes widened. "Are you insane?" Ross smiled faintly. "Completely." He slammed his hand onto the control panel. The chamber roared to life, blue energy flooding the ruins. Machines that hadn't moved in thousands of years began to stir. The ground cracked, releasing pillars of light that shot into the sky. The Sovereign Dawn fired its cannons, but the beams dissolved mid-air. The ancient defense field activated, wrapping the planet in an invisible shield. From orbit, the Empire's commanders watched in horror as their weapons failed. One officer shouted, "That technology, why it's human." The Admiral's voice shook. "Impossible. They were extinct." But below, Ross stood at the heart of the awakening. The machines pulsed like living hearts. The old human defense network was waking, and it recognized its creators. Energy flowed through the Odyssey, merging ancient systems with modern ones. Lyra stared in awe as symbols lit up across the walls. "It's responding to you, to your DNA," she said. Ross looked at his glowing hands. "Then maybe we're not just descendants," he whispered. "Maybe we're the continuation." The Sovereign Dawn turned to retreat, but the defense system reacted. Beams of white fire arced through space, disabling the massive ship without killing its crew. Ross smiled grimly. "Even our ancestors believed in mercy." The chamber quieted, the lights fading back to calm. The shield around the planet held strong. Ross looked at Lyra. "Now the galaxy knows what humanity was," he said. "And what it still is." She nodded slowly, her voice trembling. "You've just changed everything." "Captain?" Ross smiled faintly. "No," he said. "We just reminded them who we are, outside." The planet glowed brighter. Humanity's lost world had awakened again, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy looked toward Earth, not as a forgotten relic, but as a rising power once more. A new dawn. The light of the awakening still shimmered across the planet. From orbit, the storm clouds glowed like silver veins, pulsing with the heartbeat of ancient machines. The Odyssey floated above the world in silence, its crew watching what no human eyes had seen in 1,000 ages. Earth's lost child reborn. Captain Ross stood at the bridge window. His reflection merged with the stars below him. The ruins of Colony N7 burned with gentle fire. He felt small before it, and yet for the first time, he felt part of something endless behind him. Hana whispered, "Sir, transmissions are flooding in from every sector. The Council, the Empire, even neutral systems," and everyone saw the signal. Ross smiled faintly. "Good, let them know we're awake." In the med bay, Commander Lyra sat beside the viewing port. Her silver eyes reflected the planet's glow. She had never seen anything so alive. Her people had spent centuries building empires, but they had never built hope. And now she saw what the humans carried, not dominance, but defiance, not perfection, but persistence. Ross entered quietly, his step soft on the metal floor. "You should rest," he said. She turned, smiling. "I've done enough resting for one lifetime." He leaned beside her, watching the sky. "They'll come." "You know," she said. The Council, my people. They'll want to claim the technology, control it or destroy it. Ross nodded slowly. Then they'll have to get through us first. Lyra shook her head. You can't fight the whole galaxy. Ross looked at her with calm determination. Who said we'd fight? Maybe we'll teach. Moments later, the comms crackled alive. Multiple fleets approaching. Circe, but no weapons powered, Hana reported. Ross exchanged a glance with Lyra. Put them on screen. Dozens of ships appeared in orbit. Alien. Human hybrid, some bore the banners of old enemies. Others the marks of explorers one by one. They broadcast the same message. We saw your signal. We come to talk. The chamber of the ancient ruins became the meeting place. Representatives from every major race stood under the arches built by forgotten humans. No council seats, no thrones, just ground and light. Ross and Lyra walked at the front. He spoke simply. This place isn't a weapon anymore, it's a reminder. Lyra's voice followed, clear and strong. My people use this power to rule, but humans once used it to protect. They created it to stop extinction, not cause it, the crowd murmured. A counselor from the blue-skinned Sarathi stepped forward. If this is true, humanity was the first civilization. The seed of all our knowledge, Ross answered softly. Maybe. Or maybe we were just the first to make enough mistakes that everyone else learned from them. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Small, but real, for the first time in centuries. The galaxy wasn't at war, it was listening. Later that night, the Odyssey floated in quiet orbit again. The crew gathered in the observation deck. Watching the stars, the old ship looked battered, patched and scarred. Yet it gleamed like something new. Lyra stood beside Ross. You could rule them all now, she said. Ross chuckled. We didn't come this far to become what we fought. She tilted her head. Then what will you do? He looked at the stars, his voice soft but sure. We'll explore, we'll build, we'll help others stand. He paused. And maybe one day, we'll find the rest of what we left behind. The crew raised their glasses, recycled water. But it tasted like victory. Outside, the ancient defense towers shut down one by one, their light fading into the soil. They had served their purpose, guarding humanity's secret until it was ready to return. Lyra watched them vanish, her voice barely a whisper. Your ancestors could destroy worlds, but they chose to save one instead. Ross nodded. Now it's our turn. The next dawn rose across the planet. Golden light swept over the ruins, turning steel to gold and ice to fire. A new signal pulsed through the stars. Not a distress call, not a threat, just a message. Simple and human. We are here, we remember, and we reach out our hand again. Across galaxies, across species, across history itself, beacons lit up one after another, echoing the ancient call of Earth. The age of silence was over, and the universe, for the first time in 10,000 years, had something new to believe in. Humanity's hand, once lost, had returned, and this time it would never let go.